So welcome to our live chat today about neurodiversity in defence. I am Sergeant Kirk Davis and I am with two other guests today. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about neurodiversity as a person and the professionalism that it brings to your daily work?
So I'm Lisa Hodge and I'm a civil servant. My current day job is a senior commercial officer. So that just means I manage a portfolio of contracts. At the moment, I'm working within the Navy to support some of their Type 45 ships and the QEC, which is nothing to do with neurodiversity, but myself, I am dyslexic and I have got ADHD. So ADHD is a bit of a newer diagnosis for me. I've known I've had dyslexia, well, probably since forever, but I was only diagnosed 6 years ago with dyslexia, and then ADHD, I was diagnosed last year with it. So it's kind of something that's still new to me, but I'm getting to grips with it. But it's something that I've questioned because I've got a son who also has ADHD, and when I've seen him and his little quirks, I've gone, oh, yeah, that looks really familiar. And then we've gone through the diagnosis process with him, and I've seen the boxes he's ticked, and I've gone, yeah, that's me. Oh, and that one's me. So I'm currently waiting for an autism assessment as well. And that's, again, because of my son, because of the boxes he's been ticking. I've gone, oh, yeah, I wonder where that comes from. And then obviously it's me. So waiting for that one at the moment. I think for me, it's important to have this recognised because, as I said, I've got a son and he's only 13 at the moment, but he's going to have a job one day. And he might not work in defence, but he will have a job somewhere else. But there will be another Morgan that comes into defence who's exactly the same as Morgan and needs that support right at the start. So I do all of this stuff that we currently do because there's going to be another Morgan coming along at some point.
And that's great. And you're just trying to make a difference so people in the future, it's better for them.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I've just started talking. I haven't introduced myself. So I'm Kirk's second guest. My name's Chris Harris. I'm a lieutenant in the Navy. Neurodiversity is important to me, similar to Lisa, actually. So started the conversations with my family about this because one of my daughters started struggling with school following COVID, actually. Through the research and all the efforts we went in to find out what was going on with her, and she has diagnoses of level 2 autism, inattentive ADHD, and dyslexia as well now. Through learning all that, I, like Lisa, found that a lot of boxes my flora ticked. Also, a lot of these conditions are hereditary, similarities with my behaviour, and the self-awareness that has come with that has been fantastic. I've been screened in the Navy for ADHD, and I'm on waiting lists for diagnosis with that and autism. I work at HMS Raleigh at the moment, the Royal Navy's Phase 1 training establishment, and I'm heavily into coaching. And because of my neurodivergence and my not expertise, but because I'm very keen on the conversations about that, a lot of the neurodivergent coachees, I mean trainees mainly, because the support, the coaching networks, they're primarily for them. A lot of the neurodivergent ones, or people who maybe didn't get diagnosed in school but have traits that have been raised since they've joined up, are signposted to me. So I have conversations in a slightly different way to what maybe regular coaches in the Navy would, because of my self-awareness and my awareness of these conditions through my family.
Oh, amazing.
That's me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. Similarly there. I've always known I've been dyslexic. It's nothing that was new to me. I think in the last couple of years, it's become more apparent how bad I had dyslexia, and I come to understand it. And And it wasn't until I went on to do a master's degree. I don't think I've mentioned this to anyone before, but
You've done a master's degree.
I thought I'd mention it again. Whilst I was at uni, they were like, "Have you ever been tested?" And I'm like, "What, for dyslexia? Well, we already know this." And they're like, "Nah, mate, you've got ADHD." And through like doing the screening for that and talking to the doctors and trying to do a full assessment, they potentially think there might be a little bit more across lap over with autism, so it'd be AUHD, but that's a conversation for another day, I guess. So, what do you mean when you use the terminology neurodivergent every day in work? Lisa, what would you say?
Oh, good question. So I think it's a term that is sort of new to many people. A lot of people use the term neurodiversity. And actually that's a term that describes everybody, because everybody is new. There is neurodiversity all around us because everybody's brain works in a certain way. And diversity just means like how everyone functions. Whereas neurodivergent means specifically people who have set conditions such as dyslexia, autism, ADHD, Tourette's. I think there's a few other ones that I can't name off the top of my head as well. But I think it's capturing the people who sit within that terminology, even though I don't technically like the term myself. Actually, I don't really like the word neurodivergent.
Oh, you don't like the label. You don't like.
So I don't like the word. So
Okay.
in my head, the term divergent always kind of has the connotations of something negative. And I don't feel like my neurodivergent brain is a negative. So that's kind of why I don't like the term. But it's probably just me being a bit quirky. But for me, it just feels a bit like we're being segregated into the negative,
You're
can't
being
do
labelled
box.
as different, and that's still perceived as being
Different,
a negative
yeah.
thing. Yeah. So I agree. I think main the problem was that we as a race, as a society, have overdefined what is normal in the first place to then have to have a label for something that diverges from that normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think labelling it does sort of then categorise it. But I think having this conversation is more about alleviating the stigma behind the terminology neurodivergent. And actually, there are many people across the field, it be Army, Navy, Royal Air Force, civil servant, that are neurodivergent and actually play a key role in every day, but are afraid to talk about being neurodivergent. One, because the word comes with stigma, or they might not know, like you said. Both of you stated in the beginning of this conversation that you realise that you had the traits of neurodivergence through your children. And there will be so many people across the board because the word itself is great, but in itself, it likes, what's the word I'm looking for? Structure. And because the military is so structured across the board, people that are neurodiverse go misdiagnosed because of structure. And it isn't until you become a parent and you start seeing your children, because school has structure, but it's not as structured as everyday working life, that we start to see these traits. And then, like, I found out when I was 38 that I had ADHD, and it hit me quite hard. It really did. It hit me hard because I felt like everyone else around me knew, but I didn't know. And I was like, so I don't know myself. So it really did sort of take me back, and I was like, oh, so all these years, and then you start to nitpick. Oh, I wouldn't have done that, or that wouldn't have gone wrong, and it's not an excuse or a blame because I didn't know. I can now go, oh, I've got ADHD, so I did that because of that. No, it's not, and I'm not trying to ever say that. But if we could help ourselves and learn more about it, even if we're neurodivergent or neurodiverse, and everyone knows about it, so when they find out how their brains work and think, they don't go through that instant self-doubt like I did. And I'll speak out openly, I went and did counselling for it, morely because I couldn't understand and process it. I was like, how do you all know about me, but I don't know about
And you're
me?
the last to know.
Yeah, and why am I the last one to know? And then you feel like you're a laughing stock. So actually, what I want to do, and this is what this is all about today, is actually we should all be able to walk into work, be open about how we think and process, and it shouldn't have a label. It should just be like, oh, he's gone a little bit quiet because he just needs to take time out. He wants to sit by the window because he focuses better by there. He puts his headphones on because there's too much noise in the room. That shouldn't be like, a stigma. That should be like, oh, I appreciate how he works, how he learns, and how the best way I'm going to get out of my soldiers and my subordinates and my peers is understanding them. And if we understand each
Yeah.
other so much
Yeah,
better,
agree.
we'd have such a better field, right?
I think the thing is, though, I think I'd rather have a label of ADHD or dyslexia or autism or all three of them. I'd rather have it labelled as what it is. And that might be like the autistic part of my brain that just says, well, call a shovel a spade kind of
Sorry,
thing.
was you in the cadets or like something like you're a badge collector? You just want to be like, I want all the badges.
I was a Brownie guide, actually, and I did have quite a few badges, so leave me alone. A cadet, as if I'd be so rubbish as a cadet. My brother was in the cadets, but not me. But, like, I think having the label is important, and I think being able to say that you have a certain condition is important. And it doesn't mean that, you know, I've got this condition and, like, there's a one-size-fits-all approach for that. But I think having that label and then saying, well, this is what it means for me and this is how you can support me, that's a critical part of it. And I think that's why we need to break it down further from just being neurodivergent. But I think going back to like what you were just saying about how hard you took it when you found out you had ADHD, I think there's a natural grieving process. And it sounds ridiculous because why would you grieve finding out you've got something? But for me, even though I kind of had the idea of like, probably I do have this, there was that kind of grief period where I thought like, what could have been, how my life could have been different had I've just known, like how much support would I've had going through my life, and like all of the things that have impacted me, like relationships and stuff like that, that have just ended up going wrong and stuff like that in my life. It's like, why did all of that happen? And now somebody could have like explained how it affects it to me, like when I was like 18 or whatever. That would have been far more helpful than waiting until I'm 37 for it. So,
And do you feel that now those things in your past maybe make a bit more sense now you've got the diagnosis?
yeah, I can look back and go, yeah, okay, that's why that happened. But I guess that was part of the grieving process for me. It was kind of like, oh, okay, that happened because of that. And that's really frustrating because it might not have happened, but it's kind of then dealing with it again in a way. Like, it sounds ridiculous because you like think, well, you've gone through it already, so you've obviously dealt with it, but actually you deal with it with a new sort of lens over it. You may be a bit kinder to yourself because it's kind of actually, it wasn't just me being a screw up again. It happened because of my brain just being a little bit quirky and thinking, actually, do you know what? Let's do something different.
And then how much does that affect the way you parent Morgan as well?
Oh, my days. It's difficult. So Morgan's my firstborn child. And I had him when I was 24. And I have definitely grown up alongside him. And I've obviously learned how to be a mum alongside him. And a lot of people said to me when he was little, God, I'm surprised you'd have any more after him, because he was just so difficult to handle. And most of the time it felt like I was doing everything all alone with him. And I went through really bad postnatal depression as well with him. And I didn't know about that. Like, that was something that I only found out after I had my daughter. But again, that's closely linked to ADHD as well. So actually maybe my pregnancies and my like sort of early years of being a mum might have been different had I have just known that I had ADHD. But anyway, I didn't. So kind of figuring out how to be around Morgan and how to kind of, it sounds awful to say the word handle because he's not an animal, so we don't handle him, but dealing with him on a daily basis is not easy. Even now at the age of 13 or 14, he's a stinky boy. He doesn't want to wash. He doesn't want to.
I suppose you've got teenage hormones kicking in as well.
And he stinks most of the time. And I'm like, dude, you need to shower. But he's like so resistant to that. But again, like ADHD is part of that, is like your ability to sort of like do your daily routines and self-care.
Yeah.
That's difficult for a lot of people. That, you know, I mean, it's a really stupid conversation we're having about a teenage boy, but actually there's a lot of adults out there who really struggle with that kind of stuff.
No, this is brilliant because it was going to bring me into the next question. Sort of, how does dyslexia and ADHD different? And I'll open that up to you, and then I'll answer them from my perspective. But do you want to?
How are the conditions?
Yeah. How
different?
do you define dyslexia and ADHD?
Well, I mean, I suppose they're similar in their neurodivergent conditions. I think they're also similar in maybe people's experience at school. If certainly if you don't know what's going on, people with these conditions might be struggling at school, not being attentive, being disruptive potentially, and without the awareness of what the condition potentially is, it can easily and historically are labelled as stupid, naughty, the end, and that label will stick with people. And I, I like to think we're getting better at it, just like you said, Kirk, about the diminishing stigma and greater recognition for these conditions. But our experience with primary schools is not so, and as a result, at Rally, I see a lot of people I see a lot of people come through the gates who need support for their learning because they know they're neurodivergent, or their staff have recognised certain traits in them that they know they're neurodivergent. But I see a lot more people come through the gate who have no idea why they're struggling and have always struggling. Oh, well, that's just me. I'm stupid. I'm disruptive.
It's quite surprising, really, isn't it? Because like the new recruits, typically they're quite young, aren't they? They're not. You don't have recruits coming in that are kind of in their 30s, like our kind of generation. They're all like pretty fresh out of school, aren't they? Like, so you would have thought the education system by now would have caught up with these kids and just kind of had that sort of bit in place. But as you said, like, obviously being a parent, I already know it's not. But it's just crazy that we've learned nothing in that amount of time.
And just because our awareness is growing, we can't assume that everyone is that aware. We've learnt through having our children, but young people coming through the door who don't know that they are and they're struggling, that's a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, you've definitely just hit the nail on the head there. And I think these conversations will now open new doors for other people, and they will sort of listen to our story, hopefully, and then have a reflect and they go, actually, I get that. And, and there are supports out there. It's harder as an adult to get support than it is a child. But at least as you're aware that you've gone through all of this with Morgan and you've got doing it with your daughter, the system is not easy to challenge. It doesn't matter what age you are, a child or an adult. And I think that's half the battle. I was told at school that I was stupid, I was disruptive, and I'd never succeed in my life. I'd just, scrape bare minimum. But hey, I'm here today. I've had a fantastic army career, and
I mean, you've done a master's as well.
And I've done a master's. Yeah, I'm glad you remind me. I forgot about that.
You went to university or something, didn't you?
I think the uni bit was made up. I went online and just got the certificate printed off and just like made up. But yeah, so I think the most important conversation we're going to have today is actually if we could capture our new recruits early and understand them early, I think we're giving them the best opportunity of having the most successful career. Like, I'm not saying I haven't had a successful career. I've had a very good career, and it's been very most roller coastered in the sense of I've had some people in my chain of command that have understood me. I've had some that don't understand me, positives and negatives. But I feel like, as you stated earlier, we're in a place now, it is getting better. People are starting to understand it a little bit more. So, like you do at Rally, like you do within your civil service job role with your team, like I'm trying to do across the army, and the RAF are very good at it as well. I think if we capture it early, our subordinates coming through will have such a better career drive. I think we'll have a better retention rate. I feel they want to stay. I feel like they want to belong. Yeah. I think we just need to endorse, I think I got the right word there, a little bit more of understanding and teaching our teachers, the instructors need to be taught the understanding of the meaning of neurodiverse. And I think if we get that right, everything naturally over time will fall into place and it will just come second nature. So I'm not going to say the policy doesn't work, because it absolutely does. But there's gaps in policy that we need to challenge and improve. And having this conversation is going to help make those differences and make change. Would anyone else like to add to that before we move on to the next
wonderful.
question?
That was like a bombshell. It's just like, how do I follow that? I agree with you totally, and I think there's you said earlier about the structure that some neurodivergent people crave, making, especially if you finish school and you've not done particularly well at school and you may be floundering for a next step. The military can offer structure, which if you're struggling with, like you said about executive function, and actually you quite like having people being told to shower and be there at that time in that rig and go and iron that, and that is very appealing to some neurodivergent people, and then leads to them being very successful. Whether they learn that they are neurodivergent at that point or any point in their career is a different question. And I wanted to add that so we have new recruits join virtually every week at Rally, and they are all screened in, I want to say the first week, but it might be the first couple of weeks, for any kind of SBLD or anything. The current percentage of people who would benefit from some kind of adaptation is 42% based on that screening,
That's
which
quite
is huge.
high.
Now, we don't have diagnoses for all those people, clearly. Not everyone takes us up on any kind of support, but it's just a really interesting figure. And then, what phase 1 training is like. Everyone's moving in the same direction. There's a lot of neurodivergent traits wouldn't necessarily reveal themselves in that environment, because you've got 30, 60 other people moving in the same, everyone's ironing a shirt. I must be ironing a shirt at this point. And there's that kind of pressure to kind of follow everyone and do the same thing as everyone else. Great. But then in phase 2, when you've got a bit more freedom, a bit more autonomy, we actually find that more people come forward because they start to struggle at phase 2 rather than phase 1.
See, that's why I think I'd be rubbish in the military. The whole being told what to do all the time.
Well,
Absolutely
but that's
not.
it, and it doesn't work for everybody because an autistic trait is can be PDA,
Yeah.
pathological.
Avoidance,
I think we're
yeah.
drifting away from the pathological bit, but demand avoidance.
Yeah.
And being told, actually being told you can't do something, like you said as well.
Yeah.
It can be a huge motivator as well. You'll be no good at that. Well, watch me prove you wrong.
I mean, Kirk
Watch
is the
me-
ultimate
and,
person for that.
Are you?
Do you know
Yeah.
what? This is why I believe
Yeah.
I've got that overlap with autism inside me, because you just, like, throughout my career, like, you'll never be a PDI, when and did it. You'll never achieve that, when and did it. Every course I've ever achieved is because I was told I'd never achieve it. Like,
Same here.
would I have ever
Absolutely.
achieved it if someone told me I wouldn't have? Probably not, because I'm
Yeah.
so stubborn. Like, I had a conversation with someone the other day, and he made a great visual of what he said. I'm not going to say it out, but it called me out on it, and I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Like, but we shook on it. We got a deal, and you know what? If I can prove him wrong, I've then once again, he's got what he wants out of me, and I could just be like, nah. But now, because he's triggered that inside my head, I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong.
But again, I mean, firstly, be careful what you tell Kirk he can't do.
Oh no, it
but-
works to my advantage most of the time.
Does it?
Yeah.
This is why we're doing podcasts and our pop-ups, because people are like, you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to do
You
it.
won't be able to make a podcast.
This is why I've
yeah.
got Morgan. Morgan's helped me learn how to handle people. And then,
Right.
I've met Kirk, and Kirk is like an adult version of Morgan. So it's just easy to just use the same techniques I use on Morgan.
Oh, there you
Okay.
go.
Like he's
This
a
is
child.
amazing.
Not calling you a child, or
No.
anything, but,
So this is amazing, because this goes straight into what I'm going to ask now. So, how can somebody be honest about their own struggles without passing their fears and shame of anxiety onto their children, right? And that's a sort of backwards question, because in your context, both of you have found out that you're neurodiverse because of your children, right? So, how do you both now support your children, right? And obviously, you've both had successful careers, so you can say to them, "I've had a successful career. I think just like you. I didn't know I thought like you until actually you came along and showed me that I'm an amazing person because you're an amazing person." So how do you display that to your children?
Do you know what? I've always been authentically me with my children. I've never, ever pretended to be anything different. Like, being at home with my children is totally the place I can unmask and be completely me, which is not a side of me that everybody gets to see, because it's probably a little bit too much for most people. But like, just being hyperactive and just being absolutely stupid most of the time, and doing stupid things with the kids that they absolutely love. Like, the other night we were in the garden, like, making mud pies and mixing in flower seeds, because I was like, we're going to make of creatures like hotel in the garden. And we were doing that at like 8 o'clock at night, which is so stupid because really it should be like winding down time. But no, it was like, we're going to do this now. And that's how I've always been as a parent with them. And it's the same with like mental health. And like, I can label these things now with my children. We can have honest conversations. And I've been struggling with my mental health over the last couple of months. And I've been really open and honest with my kids about that. And I've said to them that I'm struggling with things, but I don't always know why I'm struggling with things. And I think being able to be honest with them and just kind of saying how it is, I think actually it just benefits them so much more because they're seeing you being open and honest about stuff and like being you and not being something different. And I think that sort of sets the kind of example for them that it's okay to be them. Like watching Morgan just be his stupid self is the best thing ever. Because, I mean, you know, how that kid hasn't broken a bone in his body is, I have no
Has
idea.
he not at 13? That's pretty
No,
good
no,
going.
he's never broken a bone.
That's
Touch
pretty good
wood.
going.
Thank you for touching a little bit into mental health there. Whilst we're on that little bit of a subject, I am going to shout out to Head Up, who have kindly supported a lot of this in the background. So if you haven't heard of Head Up, please look them up. They're a military charity, and they work with current serving and veterans, and they're an amazing charity. So please do look them up. But as to get back onto topic before I go off on a tantrum, because that's what we do, right? So as we're talking about there, you always used it as to your advantage, right? So as someone who's predominantly dyslexic and everything else that came later in life, so when I had my daughter, I always found it, I was like, how am I going to talk to my daughter? How am I going to read a book to my daughter? Like, have you ever had that fear factor that you wouldn't be able to do that? Or if you've always just been like I've learned to go, actually, like, my daughter is 0 years old. She doesn't know if I can and can't read. If I just read a book to her every day as she grows up, eventually I'm going to learn the book. Or as I have done in the past and spoke about it openly, is my daughter was like, Daddy. And I was like, yeah, Darren. She went, if you can't read that word, I'll read it to you. And I laughed and I chuckled to myself. And at first I was like, Jesus, is that obvious? I can't read. But actually, it taught me that I'm actually teaching my daughter that everybody thinks differently. And she had such a positive aspect of it. And her school picked up on it, and actually they've told her that she needs to stop helping children because she's being too kind. So it's really
kind.
It's really
Too
nice.
kind.
It's really nice to me to know that my daughter's
Yeah,
not got my
that's lovely.
dyslexia. However, her ADHD is definitely in there. So for me, I want to say to parents across the board, if you're a little bit like me and worried about talking to your child, actually the best thing you can do is just read a book to your child. One, they probably don't understand anyway because they're not old enough. Or two, if they do understand, it means you're teaching them the right paths anyway. And all they want from you anyway is 5 minutes of your time. We're busy working parents. We all deploy, we travel, we go everywhere. And actually taking that 5 minutes to struggle to read is probably the best 5 minutes you'll ever have with your children.
So I do similar, but I don't read books anymore because my kids are past the point of wanting that. But it's like when they say to me, like, how do you spell this word? And I'm like, I have no idea. So it's like, Alexa, how do you spell? And it's like, I'm completely open and honest. And like my daughter, she's not dyslexic. She's probably autistic, but like she is really good at spelling. So most of the time she'll be like, I know how to spell that. And she will tell us how to spell it. And it's like, great.
See, I have a Gracie Lou who's my daughter, and I'm like, Gracie Lou, how do you spell this? Like now, when I buy cards, she's like, Dad, I'll just fill them in. She goes, I write better than you anyway. So I'm like, sweet, I've got my own PA. I've made it in life. So how do you, like, as an officer, like, you obviously find out later on in life that you're more neurodivergent. I'm very far from the dyslexia side. You're more ADHD, UHD. So, and then obviously, I think you mentioned before one of your children is dyslexic.
Yeah.
So how do you approach it from your perspective?
Well, it affects us in lots of different ways. So, I've got 3 children. Holly, who's 14, who is dyslexic. To her credit, she's the hardest working student you'll ever have. We just got she's end of year 9 going into start GCSEs in September. And her report is, the effort grades are just excellent. So, I'm not concerned about her whatsoever. It's not affecting her studies, her social life, anything really. So that's not a real big deal. Flora, as I mentioned, is my child with the most challenges, shall we say. We'll talk about her in a second. My youngest, Ruben, is 9. He's likely autistic, okay, but in a very, very academic way. He just to undermine everything, he's the most empathetic 9-year-old you'll ever meet, and puts his arm around us when he senses there might be something up with us. And you go, Dad, are you okay? Can I do anything?
Was cute.
Like at 9, and no, he's 9 now, but he's done that for years.
Yeah.
So it undermines anything anyone will stereotypes about autism. But because he's not struggling at school, because he's quite adept at all the academic stuff, the classic academic stuff, then that hasn't really become a challenge yet. The only way it affects us with him at the moment is about emotional regulation, which is starting to become an issue. Hasn't always been, but your previous question about how does a parent and a child, if they're struggling with neurodivergence, then both of them, if I'm starting to get dysregulated and I'm not doing that well, and it's because my lad's struggling and he's had a meltdown or whatever, and my getting to the end of my tether, if we're playing off each other, that can be a real challenge. But I love your take on authenticity, and I'm exactly the same. I can't not be myself.
Yeah.
It's so hard to try and pretend to be anything different. And I think there's great value in that, not just for neurodivergence, but for mental health, like you said as well. You're teaching your children to be open and honest, because they're mirrors of you, aren't they? And if you want them to be open and not mask and not hide anything from you that they might be struggling with, then there's no argument for anything else.
Exactly that. So I think, without even needing to read a question, it leads in itself. Like, see how proud we are as parents, as our children. We're also all managers and leaders of people. So imagine if our subordinates, our leaders above, below, around us, were so open about being the way they believe or the way they think and work. We can work with them and help them, and they can help us because we can understand, and that would make a better environment. You see, that's how quickly it changes. Is if the empathy in the room is correct, is right, everyone in the room is happy. But obviously, if we don't understand someone in the room and someone comes in like a wrecking ball, or someone makes sudden changes, it then triggers something inside you, and then actually you're not getting the best out of that individual. So I say this quite a lot. It's like, naturally, people through phase 1, phase 2 are, especially phase 2, as you said, you get a little bit more responsibility. And if you're, and that, once again, this is not a reasonable excuse for someone to use neurodiverse as a reason for making mistakes. But as you go into phase 2, why are you not showered? Why have you not ironed your kit? Right. But the first thing we always do is, go down the ag route, or, and I think we should be a bit more like, actually, let's learn a little bit about these people. Talk to these people, understand the individual, like, not saying that we should remove the policy. That needs to be firm and set.
Yeah, the standards
should
and
never drop.
And I think that's the fear, and maybe partly why we're not better at this.
Because
or
we're
there is
afraid.
a bit of afraid of neurodivergent traits are generally, or the main couple are spectrum disorders, aren't they? So it's not really black and white. How autism affects one person can be different, or will be different to another.
There's no one size fits all.
Absolutely. So making reasonable adjustments for people isn't, I'm autistic, okay, we'll do this for you. It doesn't work like that. So, and what unlimited resource have we got to make reasonable adjustments to cater to everybody's particular need, when when defence historically is trying to batter any individuality out of people in phase 1 to mould them into this product, this soldier, this sailor that is what we need. You can't have a personality at that point. We'll do this with you, and then that it counter it.
Does that not work though? It structures everybody into one mold, right? And then phase 2, phase 3, when you get into your structure, I think we just need to understand people as we go through.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
reasonable adjustment does not cost money. Like, if you're an instructor and you're running a course and you know at the end of the day of day 2 of a course, you're going to hand out an essay and tell your students they got that evening to read it, and then they will come back the next day and like express their. How about we go, right? I know certain people on this course have got SPLDs. They filled it in on their AI. They've told us in advance. Why don't we send them that exactly piece of paper 3 weeks before? You have now put the ball in their court. If you choose not to read it, someone with ADHD is going to read it the night before anyway, because a dyslexic brain is going, I'm going to really struggle. I'm going to really struggle. With ADHD is going, be right, mate. I'll just leave it to last minute and I'll wing it, right? So there is only so much reasonable adjustment we can give, but
at least you put the ball in their court.
But you've put the ball in their court, and I think that's what we need to do. And the more we open it up to people being able to feel free and speak openly about how they think, I think it will make just a better working environment for everybody.
Do you think, though, that kind of phase 2 environment is making people mask, though? Because, like, if you're kind of saying that we're molding these people to, like, not have personalities and, like, be this...
I'm exaggerating,
I know you're being
clearly,
flippant and stuff, but, like, if that's the kind of thing that's going on, are we forcing people to mask? To kind of get to that point of, like, going, okay, right, I'm going to have to mask all of my conditions at this point because that's not what they want from me.
But also, on the flip side, they teach people, I'm not being a devil's advocate here, they teach people, like I'm not going to lie, did I know how to use an iron before I joined the army? Did I know how to shave? No, I probably couldn't even shave, to be fair. I think it was only in the last...
You haven't shaved today.
I still can't grow a beard now. And I'm nearly 40, So there are elements of, like, I've stood in a bathroom with like 40 other geezers and a corporal screaming, going, "This is how you shave." I'm like, mate, I don't think I'm ever going to shave. But yeah, it's fantastic because everybody's being treated exactly the same and they're teaching everybody the same tools. It's more academically in the classroom where reasonable adjustments need to be made. And I think, and what I say here is, because what we've got to remember, right, we're soldiers first. Right, when you're out in the operational field, there is no reasonable adjustment. Right,
yeah.
But neurodiverse people generally think well under pressure in a situation. Right, they hyper-focus. They think they're in the moment. They deliver. The difference of being in a classroom is for a dyslexic person, when they've got loads of writing in front of them, it literally looks like a waterfall. Or you're autistic or ADHD and you can't sit still and you're fidgeting, you're annoying the person next to you, the corporal in the front is trying to deliver a lesson. He's like, "Oh, you," I won't say the word, listen in, but there's just so much going on in the room. There's a little buzzing noise over there. ADHD like, whoa. Autism's like, there's too many people in this room. Whoa. So I think we just need to make a little bit of adjustment for individuals and be like, right, we're going to deliver a PowerPoint today. It's 45 minutes long. There's 112 slides we need to get through. But what we're going to do to make it a little bit easier for everybody in the room is we're going to do 5 slides. Then I'm going to quickly ask, just a quick 30-second recap, what did people get from those 5 slides? Right? Because what I've explained it to the way you explain it, someone else in the room will go, I get it now. And I think that's it. And I think a lot of it is we get very... belt-fed is probably not the word to use, but everything is very quick, fast delivered. Because, I mean, the military life is fast delivery because you haven't got time to waste. You have to get from A to B. That's exactly how it is.
But that doesn't work for everybody.
No.
And I would say that, we keep going back to training and courses and, schools leading into that. And the conversation should be much wider. But people who highlight themselves looking like a liability, how can I possibly pass this person out? They're going to be a liability on the front line. Whereas on the front line, that might be, you might see the best version of that person under pressure. But they don't even get to that point because they haven't administered themselves correctly in early doors in training. Now, I think the conversation shouldn't just be about what reasonable adjustments can we make in training to muddle people across the line and kind of get numbers in the door and pass them out credibly. But it should be, like you've hinted at, Kirk, is higher up is, okay, so what do we do with them once they've passed out and they're part of the force? And then not just that also, but then how can we alter what we do? How can we alter our leadership and management skills to exploit these people's unique talents the benefit of the Navy, for not just the Navy, but that's me being selfish, but for
It's
the benefit
all about
of
the
the
army.
You can't have
the
all
armed
the people
forces.
in the Navy, all right?
No, the RAF are important too, by the way.
And the
Like,
civil
you know,
service.
you're sat there. We've got no representative for the Navy today, so
For
I'm
the
going to fight.
RAF.
I'm going to fight for the RAF.
Okay. I think it's important though, isn't it? Because like ultimately we all need to work together. Like as sort of the arms of defence, we all have a purpose and we all work together. And we don't necessarily communicate amongst ourselves the best way that we found of helping people. We kind of keep that to ourselves in pockets, don't we?
Still quite siloed,
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
but if you take a link out of a cog, it doesn't work, right? So you need all the parts to link to work, right? The same as across the forces. Doesn't matter what land, air, sea you are from. We all play an important role together. We make the important cog. So understanding our people from top to bottom is important. So if we actually just take this structured time whilst we're deeply into these conversations and start to deliver this to the training instructors, and then the training instructors will deliver it to the people going through, and eventually those people will become the training instructors. And do you know what? Before we realise it,
It'll
it's
be the
just
norm.
it's the norm.
Yeah.
Neurodiverse will never be a word. Dyslexia is just it will no longer be an excuse. People don't go, oh, I'm dyslexic for extra time. Dyslexics don't want extra time. They just need help with understanding. Like going, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to sit in the classroom today, and then I'll read through my notes tonight. You've actually burnt yourself out, struggling to fit in the room. All you're thinking about is the exam at the end of the week. So all you're doing is absolutely burning your brain out. By the time you get back to your room at night, guess what you're not doing? You're not looking at any of your
Because
notes.
you're exhausted.
'Cause you're
You're trying to
exhausted.
hold it together
Yeah.
during the day, pretending to be normal. Yeah.
So if we got rid of this like stigma, and you're in a classroom, and I got open about it now. I've got to a point now. I'm just like, do you know what? If you're going to treat me differently because I think differently, then that's more for you. If you want the best out of me, the best way for me is telling you how I think, and then you delivering the lesson. And if you can't deliver what my needs at that point, at the end of the lesson, go, just recap with me, and then I'll say, yes, I understood that, I didn't understand that. And then we can take 10 minutes. And I know it's very difficult because if we have 100 students and 10 of those students need 10 minutes, you know what I mean? That's a lot of time. I'm not doing quick maths, right? So, you know, it is very difficult. I get it. It's not as simple as click your fingers, a reasonable adjustment can be made. But stigma to be taken away, and understanding of neurodiverse and how it works and how us individuals think would actually make it easier for those that go to courses, because they know that the instructor has some understanding of how your brain works.
Well,
And I think that would alleviate a lot of self-doubt.
I think the thing is, defence just needs to change as an organisation, doesn't it? Because we know that warfare of the last century is not going to be the same going forward. So kind of like going into a conversation we were having earlier, looking at those skill sets that are really important for the future kind of defence is really important. So GCHQ already recruit actively for dyslexics. So do you think maybe there's kind of time for defence to be doing something
Well,
similar?
yeah, there's huge change at the moment, isn't there, with the dip and the move towards autonomous everythings.
Exactly.
That our people strategy and recruitment strategies need to complement that, don't they? They need to change equally to recruit people who will be as suitable as possible to fill whatever the new roles look like, and that's working in all our favour by the sounds of it.
Yeah, massively. And
Yeah.
like I spoke to the recruitment drive. They had a massive meeting because they're obviously, there's a gist in all organisations, and the recruitment drive, the way they recruit is changing. So I jumped on and I did a 10-minute talk about actually the journey starts at the moment these individuals walk through that door. And I said my individual journey started 19 years ago when I opened that door, and I was very like, sorry RAF, I was backing you, but at this point I'm not. Literally, they opened the door, and it was at the time I didn't know the way. It was just obviously now a service. I know the rank and I know the colour of the uniform and stuff. This lady opened the door and she went, "Army's that way." Like I look back now and I think it's quite funny. But like but there is actually no structure from the moment you get to a training to a recruiting centre. I don't know what it's like now, but like for me, I'm only in the army because a friend's mom filled in the paperwork for me to join the army. She was like, "You really want to do this, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I can't fill this application out," because they literally just go, give you a wad of paper, fill that out, come back, and then we'll start the ball rolling. Well, actually, first and foremost, why are we not engaging with the people from day dot? So if they actually know they have dyslexia, ADHD, autism, or, you know, actually they could go, "Do you know what? I know you really want that job, but I think you'd fit that job so much better because the way you focus, the way you think, you deliver, like, and we're not stopping you from joining that trade and having that job, but I really believe your expertise would be so much better in that field. And also, you can then pass that on. By the time they get to phase one, you can say, "Oh, this individual has identified from school, he has these and these." Like, so when they're going through weapon analysis, drill test, all the other important processes, the corporal's going, "Why is he not getting it?" Look at his notes. Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
You know, and see how quickly you're making belonging so much better.
If they look at the notes.
If
though.
they look at, well, yeah, if that's communicated well, which
Yeah.
we've got control over, but if these people coming through the door know that they are and haven't been abandoned by the school system before they get to us.
And that's why it goes back to your point of the Navy kind of getting on board early to screen people is really important, because actually knowing is half the battle. As you alluded to earlier when
They're
you were
doing it at Catterick
saying,
now, aren't they? Phase one. Phase two at Catterick. They're starting to screen as they go through. So they are. It is getting better. However, phase two is already 2 steps too late. Recruitment centre.
You might have lost people along the
Yeah.
way who could have succeeded
exactly.
if we'd done more
recruitment
earlier.
centre. If they can get it right, we're actually bringing people through the door that we need, and we can schedule them to job roles that probably fit better to their needs, rather
Yeah.
than just going, "Oh, here's a barb test. Oh, yeah, you didn't do so great today. You're having an off day. Your thinking cap wasn't working. You couldn't read the screen quick enough. So, by the way, I'm going to offer you 3 jobs out of the 500 that we could offer you." And then also, you're also put on the back foot. I don't know how that works for the RAF and the Navy, but the Army, you do a barb test, and then you get a list of jobs that you can basically apply for.
I confess, I don't know a lot about that. About the recruiting attract since going through it myself 22 years ago. So we might be doing them a disservice. I like to think that maybe they're more ahead of the curve than we're kind of making out they are.
Or maybe we're going to stop talking about.
No,
I
did
think
have something else to
it's
say,
just,
but
I think
I
it's
can't
just
remember what it was.
important. Like for me, I think if we get it right from the day they enter that door and moving forward, I think we'd have more boots on the ground coming through the door because they feel like they belong from the off go. And my brother wanted to join the army. He went to the recruitment centre, had a bad experience, and to this day he's never joined. He's like, "I don't know how you do it." Like they shouted at me, and I was like, "Oh, they probably didn't shout at you." But you got to remember how many people are trying to come through the door, how many people are trying to recruit. I said they're a busy organisation. If you're umming and ahhing and they're giving you a bit of pressure, they've got to do that because also you've got to understand that is what is coming. Like they can't just be like pink and fluffy and then you join phase one and then you get screamed at by some corporal.
See, I like pink and fluffy, so that's not going to work.
So I think we need to have that moderation of like understand the individual, but also give them an expectation of what is coming. Like, by the way, training is going to be difficult. Like they are going to mould you. They're not shouting at you. They're just loud because there is 45 of you in front of them. Like, let's not exaggerate that. Like, 45 people v one person.
Yeah.
You've got to be the dominant person to get your point across.
When also, especially in phase one, a lot of what we're training is command and response.
Yeah.
Because that's what has to happen on the front line, absolutely unambiguous. You know, if this needs to happen, it needs to happen yesterday with no questioning, and there is a time and a place for that. So drill training, PT training, that's what it's all about. That's what we're trying to train. And if you're demand avoidant, and maybe you don't put a label on it or that kind of thing at that point, but if that's not going to work for you at the moment, it's maybe not the right job for you. But
why don't we redirect those people? Like, so the civil service is sat right by here. We have like apprenticeship schemes and stuff like that. For the people who really want to join the services, but don't quite get through, why are we not going? There's apprenticeships in defence that you can go into. You don't have to be kind of in the armed forces as such, but you could do that apprenticeship
to complement, it's
first,
in the same kind of
and then
world,
maybe think about it.
I don't know that we don't do that.
I was
But
going to say, do you want to elaborate on that? Because there'll be a lot of people now going, what do you mean? I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about it. Like, I've been in 19 years, 22 years, like 5 minutes over here. You know, feeling long enough queues and all that sort of stuff. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean about apprenticeships through the civil servant service?
There's quite a few different areas you can do an apprenticeship in. So commercial's one of them. So as I said at the beginning, I'm a commercial officer that's managing the contracts for defence. And you do get involved in so many weird and wonderful things. I mean, one of the weirdest contracts that I've ever had in a portfolio is neutering feral cats. And that's when I worked with the team in Cyprus, which is completely bonkers for defence. And you wouldn't think we had a contract for that, but there you go. And then you've got finance, that's a different area. There are engineering apprenticeships you can go down. And there's probably loads more that I can't even reel off right now. But there's so many opportunities out there that defence are recruiting for that, you know, if people really want to work in defence, we should be going, do this instead then. If you can't get through this bit because this bit is really difficult for you and you're surround avoidance, which I can totally resonate with, then there are these other opportunities for you. And like, obviously within the civil service, we're not as rigid as what it is for you guys in the military. We have got the kind of access to work stuff where you do get the support and stuff. And obviously when it comes to the Equality Act, we're completely covered by the Equality Act, aren't we? Whereas like it's a little bit kind of grey area for you guys in the military. So it's kind of thinking about maybe if the military is not right for certain people, are those certain people then going to be kind of like, I'm going to say useful, which sounds really, really bad, but are they going to be useful in defence somewhere else? Do they have a skill set that is actually useful to defence?
Yes, I agree totally. And I would say, well, we've already said it today, that there's plenty of skills that neurodivergent people and talents that neurodivergent people have and excel more so than neurotypical people. And I don't want it to come across like I say, someone who's got PDA, we don't want you. That's not what I'm saying. The connotations of no, we don't want neurodivergent people. That's not what I'm at. I think it boils down again to self-awareness.
Yeah.
And does this person know why getting yelled at or getting told what to do doesn't work for them? Do they know that that's because it's triggering the nervous system because their brain works differently? And if they do, and then actually things change.
Yeah.
So the most positive thing is the military or the defence is the biggest accepting organisation in the world that accepts everybody. I think if we were just a little bit better understanding neurodiverse across the board, would make us even better.
Yeah.
But we accept everybody. Like, no matter where you come from, you're accepted, and I think that's the most amazing thing. And like, you can come from a broken background, you can join the military, you can do it through civil service, you can do it for military, you get apprenticeships. As you go through the ranks, you then do degrees. As you go through the ranks, you can then do late commissioning, become an officer, and then turn that into something else. So the opportunity to grow within the military, no matter what your background, is phenomenal. The support and the policy is there to help and guide with neurodiverse mindsets. I think it just needs to be a little bit more tighter, a little bit more free-flowing of stigma, people feeling that they can talk about it. And I'm sure that's across the board. Like, that's not just the military, the world concept of like in Civil Street, you can talk about neurodiversity, but in the army you can. I don't think that's a thing that exists. I just think across the board, if we were a little bit more free-flowing about being natural, speaking about the way we think, it would just make us a little bit better of an organisation, and people will feel belonging, and belonging becomes retention, and everyone's happy, and we have the best military across the board.
I think then, kind of like, just to end that point, I think then that leads to purpose. And I think we've all found a purpose in this kind of work we do within neurodivergency. And that is something that, once you feel like you belong, you find your purpose, and then you really do thrive in what you're doing. And we're all thriving in what we're doing, especially when it comes to the stuff we do with our various networks. But just having that sense of purpose is just so important for all of us.
So as I alluded earlier on in the conversation about like two of you didn't know that you were neurodiverse until later on because of your children. So what would you say to an adult who has only recently began to recognise neurodivergence in themselves? Because obviously I've lived that experience, and since I joined the Defence Dyslexia Network, there's obviously tri-service across, I mainly came on board in January, and I've done a lot of speaking out. I've done some podcasts, a lot of posts on social media. I'm quite open about how I think and I process, and I've had a lot of people come to me through all ranks, being brigadiers right to the bottom. So for me, as one person talking, I think it's helping others. Have you found you've been in the same situation where you speak openly about how you think and process, that it's helping people in your team and in your organisation? Bearing in mind, you're Royal Navy, you're a civil servant, I'm Army. But I've had people from the Royal Air Force, people from the Navy actually contact me and like, oh, how did you go about this? How so I think it's amazing. I think this conversation today alone will help others. So just if we answer that question, and then we can sort of go on to the last question before we wrap it up for the day. But how would you, where was it? What would you say to someone as an adult who has recently began to recognise their neurodivergent mindset themselves?
Support is out there for you, I think is what I would say to you. So I think it was 4 years ago, I co-founded the Defence Dyslexia Network because there was nothing out there that was supporting people with dyslexia in defence. And it just seemed like such an obvious gap to me. I'd only just kind of figured out that I was dyslexic, and I was like, right, we need to change this stuff. And as I always said, I've got Morgan, and I was like, Morgan's going to need support at one point with this stuff as well. So let's do it. And then that's kind of how the Dyslexia Network came about, with me and a few other people having a kind of similar mindset to just create the network. And we've gone from 5 people to over 2,000 people in the space of 4 years. And it's a network that doesn't just support people with dyslexia anymore. We've kind of gotten past just dyslexia. We support like everything. And I think that's the beauty of having a network, is having that network of people who are like-minded, and you can have a conversation with them and be like, oh, how have you managed to get around this? And you can have a conversation and figure out, oh, right, okay, this worked for this person, might work for me. And then it's kind of snowball effect. Once one person knows about it, they pass it on to somebody else. And then you manage to collect all these people along your journey. And the amount of people that have come to me since starting the network and said, it's because of you, I know I'm dyslexic, in a positive way. They haven't accused me of it, obviously, but like coming and just saying, you've changed my life, because actually now I know I can do something about it and things aren't as much of a struggle as they used to be. I don't know, Chris, if that's kind of like similar for you and with the network.
I would say just my bottom line for me is just talk about it.
Yeah.
Even like coining something a support network implies that people are in need of support because they're failing at something and it's a flaw, but brains are just different, and we need to kind of get away from thinking that there's something wrong. It's just different. Bottom line for me, just have those conversations. And the conference I ran, what was it, a month ago, I had people come up to me after that, instigating conversations, people I'd never spoken to before, from all backgrounds. We had tri-service representation there. Just raising your awareness of what you're potentially struggling with, or just, if you're masking, or you just making your life easier by being open about it. Like you said, discovering maybe some coping mechanisms that you might not have thought of, that will make things easier. And there's plenty you can do, not just in research, but everything else that you can do before you've got a diagnosis. You don't have to wait for a label or a diagnosis, or that, I say a label, the validation that comes with a diagnosis, before making adjustments to your daily work in life and improving things for yourself and others around you.
Yeah, I think you already know how you think, how you process, like with or without a diagnosis, a label, because sometimes in this world, a piece of paper makes all the difference. You should be able to go, oh, do you know what? I think like this. I've got my headphones on. It's not because I'm ignoring everybody. I just find it easier to work with my headphones on, and that's a basic reasonable adjustment and communicated across your team. Everybody understands why you're doing it. So, it's that easy to make everything so much easier by just communicating. So I think you pretty much just answered the last question anyway. I was going to say, what is one message you want to give to the listeners today to take away from this chat? Do you want to go first? I'll go Lisa and then I'll close it down.
I would just reiterate what I said earlier about it. Everyone thinks differently. Your differences aren't flaws. They're not negative. We focus mainly on the negative things that we spot because they're different to most people. But you'll also have positive traits that maybe we haven't been able to tap into because we're so busy focused on the negative. So if we're open about the negative and have those conversations that make you realise that they're not negative things at all, and the more people, I'm sure you two as well, the more people you speak to, you realise everyone's affected by this totally. So yeah, have those conversations, and it's for everyone's benefit. The Navy, the armed forces as a whole, you individually, personally, family, etc. So just let's continue talking about it.
So I was going to say something similar, to be fair. So the negatives are really easy to identify. It's really easy to sit there and go, oh my God, this is wrong with me and this is wrong with me. And I'm really rubbish at that. But actually figure out what the positives are. Figure out what your strengths are. Because once you start looking at your strengths, you realise that actually there's so much more capability within you that you've maybe never really unleashed because you've focused on the negatives. And then once you're able to kind of spin it around into the positive, I think it just opens up your mindset a lot more. I think that's kind of how I've found it anyway. And just being open and honest, and just be authentically you. Bring the mask down. It's so much easier to be just you, I think.
Amazing. You both absolutely nailed that. I think out of the 28 questions that I came with today, I think we answered about 3 of them, but went on a tangent and answered about 40 different other questions. So that is the beauty of this. We came here with a plan and we executed it with a different plan. But thank you both for attending today. It's been absolutely a pleasure to chat with you. And hopefully people out there will take some from our conversation today. And if anybody is interested in joining us and having your own lived experience and talking and sharing your story, I'd love to do another one of these. So please reach out to myself directly. Thank you for listening. And that's us.